breakfast puppies?
This podcast contains adult language and content and is meant for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
We're all set to begin, so let's dive right in to bikers, dice, and bars. Talking bicycles and motorbikes, gamer things and all the like. You can listen to it in your cars, but mostly it's about dive bars. Bikers, dice, and bars.
All right, Xander, what am I about to be drinking?
You are about to be drinking a white Ukrainian, which is like if a white Russian just had a fuck ton more alcohol in it and it was a lot sweeter. It is, oh boy, it's we actually specifically went out and found some Ukrainian vodka. It's 1 ounce of Ukrainian vodka, 1 ounce of Kahlua, 1 ounce of an Irish cream liqueur, 1 ounce of amaretto, 1 ounce of Frangelico.
There's way too many words.
1 ounce of Malibu rum. It is.
Oh my God, it smells terrible.
You then add a bunch of milk to it and put it into a cocktail shaker and shake and dump. And let's see how it goes.
Don't let the Mogan David Company hear about this because it would be their next popular flavor.
Oh,
boy.
it's really sweet.
There's a lot going on in this drink.
There is a lot.
There's a lot going on
drink
here.
Has a lot to say.
Speaking of people who have a lot to say, like that guy in that Tool song, here we are, Bikers, Dice, and Bars, recorded in Portland, Oregon. I'm NPC.
I'm just Jacob.
Dr. Xander, Gerrymander.
I am Poppy Beaujolais.
I don't know if I have an opinion of this drink yet. I'm confused. That was my mouth.
After I posted this recipe to the host chat, I found another recipe for this exact same thing, which replaces the 4 ounces of milk with 1 ounce of heavy cream. I couldn't decide whether that would be better or worse.
My thoughts on this cocktail, as I was discussing with Poppy when we were making them upstairs, is there's too much sweetness here. I don't think it's necessarily an unsalvageable drink, but there needs to be a fuck ton more vodka, about a quarter of everything else. That might work then.
I'm mostly confused as why the Malibu rum was
Yes.
necessary. I can't taste it at all.
I can't taste anything else. That's all I can taste.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, all I can taste is milk and Malibu rum. Yeah.
The coconut's pretty forward in here. I think it's very overpowering. But
So why is this particular to Ukraine?
some stuff going on there. It's not great.
No, I mean the drink.
Oh,
I think
There's crazy shit happening in UK right now. I'm just wondering why this mix of things, including Malibu rum, is a Ukrainian-themed beverage.
So, I mean, part of it, as Poppy mentioned when we were talking before the podcast, in the Ukraine, it's considered not exactly low class, but not a good idea to be drinking vodka straight.
the direct quote I read on the internet was, "It is considered indecent to drink vodka straight in Ukraine."
Lottie fucking duh.
I know, right?
And that said, Ukrainians do drink a lot of vodka. It is one of the many places that has an independent vodka tradition. But my understanding, both talking to friends back home who are of Ukrainian descent, many of them with parents who fled the fall of the Iron Curtain, mentioned that when vodka appears in many drink recipes, but it is often prepared with spices and fruits and many other sweeteners. For whatever reason, there's a tendency in many of the Baltic states to drink spiced, flavored, and sweetened cocktails or drinks, either like infused brandies, drinks that are mixed ahead of time and then put up for 12 hours. One of the recipes we were looking at would have required a day's work yesterday plus an overnight sit to serve today, and we just didn't have time. But they have a very interesting liquor culture in the Baltics, and Lithuania, Estonia, and especially Ukraine just like things that bring a little bit of sunshine into a dreary winter. And I think that's where a lot of the focus on sweetness comes from.
So based off the very, very quick internet research I did, so grains of sand and grains of salt or whatever, this is not like, a drink you could go to Ukraine and is going to be like a popular drink there. This is more of a inspired by, kind of like, like a white Russian. This is a white Ukrainian. The actual Ukrainian cocktails are, like Jacob was saying, more like fruit and spices. It's more like mold liquor. Mold liquor. Yeah.
And so when I was talking to folks back home about this particular cocktail recipe, a couple of them had heard of it. And their take on it was an Americanization of the American drink, a White Russian, but with more of those flavor notes that you'd find in the Ukraine present. The fruitiness of the coconut, the spices of the frangelico, the darker hints that the Irish cream brings in.
Why the Malibu coconut rum? I think I would leave that out if I ever made this again.
Honestly, my suspicion is it's one of the quote-unquote fruit liquors you could add to it and not have it train wreck the milk.
Oh, okay. All right.
So, gentlemen bartenders, if you were going to do your spin on this basic idea, what would you change or how would you mix this drink? If somebody came to your bar and said, I want a white Ukrainian, what would you give them?
A $14 demand.
And a dirty look.
Yeah. Because it's a pain to mix.
Yeah, this was not fun. I actually already said what I would do to change it like 5 minutes ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But wait, that's a great introduction to our topic.
Hey, what happened? Yeah.
Gaming with ADHD.
Yeah, I don't even remember what we were supposed to be talking about right now, so thanks for the reminder.
I think I got it, but just in case, say it all again because I wasn't listening.
I would ditch the Malibu rum. I would put it down the sink where it belongs.
Right.
And then I would go and instead of having an ounce of everything, I would go with probably so much booze in this drink, by the way. I'd probably start with 2 ounces of vodka and maybe a quarter ounce of everything else, which again would make it even more a pain in the tits to make because pouring quarter ounces sucks a lot, especially with 4 other ingredients. It's just tedious. I might use a thicker milk, either a whole or I think a heavy whipping cream might do well, or a half and half or something like that. Probably top it with some like nutmeg, maybe cinnamon allspice. Cinnamon stick, maybe, yeah. I think this also could potentially work as a warm drink. I think you could heat it up, and I think it'd be okay.
Ooh, yeah.
Very nice.
That's my thoughts on this.
So, Jacob, what's our cheers? What's our Ukrainian cheers?
Budmar.
That word.
Budmar.
All right, what are we talking about again?
We are talking about gaming.
Something shiny.
I see the Squirrel Brigade is in force today at the recording table. We are talking about gaming with attention deficit disorder. Several of the hosts of the podcast live this experience. Several of the hosts of this podcast GM for this experience. So we're just going to talk about it because it's a reality.
Okay. Yeah, See, I already lost my train of thought. Boom. Yep. Drink. Gaming. That's right.
So what is ADHD?
A good starting point.
ADHD. So attention deficit / hyperactivity disorder used to be split up between ADD and ADHD. Now, DSM-5, we call it ADHD, attention deficit / hyperactivity disorder. And you can either be primarily hyperactive, primarily inattentive, or combined presentation. They just kind of mixed it all together and said there's so many overlapping symptoms and people are all so different. Like it's all going to fall under this general diagnostic sort of umbrella. And there you go.
I had a math teacher that once said I had ADHD back when it was called BRAT.
I think I've heard that before. It was a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Gettler. Never forgot that one.
I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was a wee child because I was a BRAT. I couldn't focus in school. I was just rambunctious, and it wasn't that I was like active or up to no good. I just couldn't focus. I was just all over the place. It was wild. And then from a very young age, I started taking Ritalin. Took it through middle school. And basically it resulted in me not having a personality. And then I stopped taking it in middle school and suddenly I had friends. So I don't know what other people's experiences are, but I say fuck Ritalin. And I also remember it being one of those things that people, like, if you said that you had it, people would question you. Like, no, that's a fake diagnosis. You would often hear people not believing you had ADHD because they either didn't believe it was real or didn't believe that the symptoms that you displayed were, evidence.
So what exactly does it do to you? Because I don't think I have it. And so I don't know how it affects you in either day-to-day life or, as we'll get into later, gaming specifically.
My life experience with it has always been that I have a hard time staying on one track, either one track of thought or one track of activity. And it's very difficult for me to put a plan in motion unless that rare, but yet it also extremely valuable talent suddenly kicks in, which is the ability to hyperfocus. The hyperactivity part of ADHD for me is that hyperfocus, where suddenly I can get my brain on a thing and I cannot be pulled out of that thing. And you could talk to me. I could have other things that I'm supposed to do, but my brain is just, nope, it's in that zone and it's going to be doing it. And God damn it, I'm going to do it kind of thing. Like, some days you need to clean your house and you make a note to yourself, oh, dude, clean the house. And then it's like, I got something else to do, or my brain can't focus on cleaning. And then one day, a week or two later, middle of the day, you'll be in the middle of a meeting at work or something. And suddenly your brain's like, now is the time to clean the house. And then you're like, well, fuck yeah. You go and you clean and you clean and you clean like a motherfucker and everything gets crazy, spotless and organized. And you revel, you glow in that structure of order and that accomplishment. And then you just spend the day, fuck off.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 37 years old. I was not diagnosed as a child. I am a girl who went to school in the 80s and the 90s, so I didn't have ADHD. I just was whatever. I don't know that I was a brat. I just was, I don't know, whatever. I don't know what the word is for it. So I don't know what they would have called me. It's like, she's really bright. She would just apply herself. That's what I got a lot. And the thing was, I was trying to apply myself, So this really came out. So why I got diagnosed as an adult was at my, when I had my first job in my current sort of day job career, I had to sit down for long periods of time and focus, really on really, fine details and things. And it was actually physically painful to sit still for so long. Not as in like, oh, my back starts to hurt, my knees start to hurt, as in like my skin was crawling. And if I didn't get up and move around and like shake it out, like it was actually physically painful. And I had a coworker kind of turn to me and go like, oh, well, you have ADHD, right? And I was like, what? She was like, dude, you have ADHD, right? And I was like, no. She was like, yeah, you do. Like, what? So through lots of testing and whatever, they was like, oh, yeah, you super do. And started taking Adderall and it changed my damn life.
How do they test for that? They just hold up squirrels in front of you and see how long it takes for you to grab at them?
It's a combination of like you have to have had symptoms present before the age of 12 in order to be diagnosed. So you give a survey to your parents, you give a survey to somebody else, you give a survey to, it's like, they like compile a lot of data, and then you have a very, very long conversation with a psychiatrist who specializes in executive dysfunction. And then they try drugs and say, let's see what works. And if you have ADHD brain and you take a stimulant, tends to chill us out. It's kind of weird.
Sounds backwards.
It's very backwards. It's one of those, what do they call it?
Contradiction?
Counterintuitive.
Counterintuitive.
What's the word I'm looking for?
Are you talking about the pharmacological?
Paradoxical effect.
Yeah, paradoxical effect.
Paradoxical effect.
I was trying to figure out if you meant the pharmacological.
Paradoxical effect where the amphetamine comes into my brain and shouts louder than all the shit going on in my head. And my head goes, shut up and listen, basically.
Yeah, I don't have attention deficit disorder. However, my mother does. 2 of my brothers do. And I grew up in a household where I was surrounded by attention deficit disorder. I have developed coping with ADHD environments to a fine art form over the years. My first wife was attention deficit disorder. My current partner is very open about the fact they are attention deficit disorder. And in fact, literally last night, I was filling out a questionnaire for a friend of mine who in their 50s is finally going for their diagnosis because they realize they can't switch out of the career they've been in their entire life unless they get this handled. My younger brother was the poster child for the classic 80s definition of attention deficit disorder. He was a whirring gear constantly and easily distractible, always in motion, like had a anthropic field around him where things would just destroy themselves because he was constantly fiddling with them. And
that sounds like my pre-diagnosis childhood. Yeah.
And
oh my gosh, yes.
He ended up on dexamphetamine because it was one of the drugs available in the late 80s, early 90s. And dexamphetamine, for those in the know, that's 70s era biker speed.
Yeah. Dexedrine.
Yeah.
Dextroamphetamine.
And it worked wonders for him, but boy, did he need med breaks because it really, really puts a tweak on you.
Was he breaking his teeth?
No, thankfully.
Okay, that's good.
Honestly, the number of people I know who were on old school Ritalin and stuff who suffer from teeth problems nowadays, it's not uncommon, all the teeth grinding.
Yeah.
That said, the modern drugs for it are far kinder and gentler.
Oh, yes.
And one key thing I want to say is that it is not in and of itself the fact you are constantly in motion or constantly distracted. There are a host of other factors, everything from PTSD to minor brain injury to anxiety disorder to issues with sensory integration that can lead to symptoms that, without proper screening, some layperson will go, that person has attention deficit disorder. And so that's why quality testing is important, because otherwise you can receive basically the wrong treatment for it. Mm-hmm. Now that we've gone through the technical details about what it is, let's get to the root of what we were talking about is how do you fit that in at the game table, and how does it affect you at the game table? How do you as a game master work around it? What tools do you use? All that sort of thing.
How do I deal with a bunch of players with ADHD around me?
As I sit here swiveling in my chair
I'm a bouncy ball.
Because I didn't take my Adderall today. Yeah.
As a game master, as a GM, career GM with ADHD, well, that's why I'm a GM, because I suck as a player. I can't be a player. There are an extremely few number of exceptions to this rule, but largely, almost entirely. I cannot be just a player in a game, as it's too limited of a scope of agency. Too limited of a scope of agency for me in a game to just be a player, because I've only got one thing that I can do, and that's just do what this one person is doing. And even then I have to wait my turn kind of stuff. I can't do it. If I'm playing, if I'm running a game, though, there are wheels and wheels and wheels and wheels and wheels, just so many different wheels and machinations spinning in my head, webs and networks of things, and all these things I can move and focus on this, move and focus on this, do this, do this, do this. That's how I thrive. And for years, I thought I was just like a shitty player, like I was just terrible at it. And it turns out I kind of am, but I'm not as harsh on myself about it anymore, because I thought it was like a personality problem, like maybe I was in attention horror or something. And it just turns out I just can't focus. Like if it's not my turn as a player, I'm on my phone, or I'm reading something, or I'm looking out the window. I am not paying attention to anyone else's stuff. But as a game master, my attention is constantly being demanded. So I'm like, I'm all in, and it's so wonderful. It allows me to skip, moving around and so on.
What's really funny too is, for as long as I've known you, which has been quite a while now, probably going on 15 years, I think, I don't think I've ever seen you play a game.
Yeah, I'm bad at it.
You've always been the GM, and I thought, man, I found the best fucking friend who not only GMs all the time, but he's really good at it, and I never thought to ask why. And I just learned that right now, and everything you said made sense, and that's why I like being in your games.
It's one of the reasons that I am a GM who actually goes against the old saying, never split the party. I know there's a lot of horror stories behind splitting the party, but as a GM, I want you to split the party. Not because I want to kill you, but because that just gives me more things to focus on. Now, if there's 3 groups of players instead of one group, but now I'm like, oh God, that wheel spinning and that wheel spinning and that wheel spinning. Oh, this is wonderful. If it's just one group doing one thing, I get eventually kind of either sidetracked or just laser focus on one person in the group, and then everybody else suffers a detriment.
So I have a question for you. I have had the privilege of playing in several of your games. You're one of my preferred GMs out there.
Thank you.
And I have noticed that you have some preferences in the way you GM, and I was wondering if some of those things are basically tools to lift focus burden or something. Like, you very much like being able to introduce random tools to the game, everything from your card decks to random roll tables, that sort of thing. How much of that is just a personal preference versus a tool to allow your brain to exist in a state where it can keep all the plates spinning?
Mm-hmm. I would say it's largely the latter. I like low prep, the less work that I have to put into something before a session, the better the session runs for me. So if I have enough tools set up to enable me to run a game spontaneously or as improvisationally as possible, that's where I thrive.
You're saying that the vast majority of your GMing is just off the top of your fucking head?
Yeah.
Goddamn genius.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible to watch him. It's kind of incredible to watch him GM, actually. He's very, my darling husband, he's very creative and can come up with this stuff really, really quickly. Those of us with ADHD brain, it's just a constant stream of stuff all the time in there. And it's often why I trip over my words, is because I'm thinking faster than I can get the words out of my face.
Absolutely.
So it's like, and you're like, what was that? And I'm like, would you like to go to the store with me? Because I'm like already like in the car, and I actually see things faster sometimes which allows me to react very quickly to some things. But it's very strange. But yeah, it's what tangent? What squirrel? Yes.
One of what you just said there about you're already in the store. That's the kind of the same with me. Like when I am running a game and I am describing a scene or something, in my brain, I've already pictured the scene and now I've moved 3 rooms away. So my words are coming out and then suddenly I'm like, I don't think I'm actually providing a good visual description. And then I have to stop, pull my brain back into the room that the players are in, figure out what color is the wall here actually, because I'm already 8 pages ahead kind of stuff. So I have to random tools or roll tables or whatnot, make it so that I don't have to worry about those things.
So as a player, Poppy, kind of as NPC was just describing how he needs to have that constant, like every little thing going at once thing or else his brain doesn't focus. As he was saying, as a player, though, you have to wait your turn.
Yep.
How does do?
So have you listened to The Wolves of Gerrymander?
Yeah, but it's been a while.
From all those years ago. Yeah.
For those of you not in the know, we also run another occasional podcast called Hammer Crawl. The Wolves of Gerrymander was one of our more lengthy running series on that one. You can find it on Hammer Crawl, the podcast, one of the many podcasts done by the Breakfast Puppies production company.
So that was a combination of a couple of different things, like cultural femininity and how women sort of communicate with each other. But for me, that was, I believe, before I had gotten diagnosed and started, figuring out how to better cope and whatever. And basically, yeah, if I'm not involved in a scene, I am not paying attention.
I've noticed.
I'm doing something. Yeah, I can't pay attention.
Even earlier when you asked me what would you do with this cocktail, I'm like, the thing I said 5 minutes ago.
What was that?
Yeah, I wasn't listening.
What happened? Yeah, I remember you saying something about Malibu, but I was like, that wasn't the whole thing.
Why is he talking about Hawaii? What an idiot!
What happened? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. So if I'm not actively involved in the scene, it is very hard for me to pay attention. And again, I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be an attention whore. I don't want to be like, well, I'm not in this scene, so it's not important. Like, I want to give everybody the respect or whatever, but I basically I can't. It takes so much energy. And I have to kind of decide, do I want to spend my energy on being creative or do I want to spend my energy on paying attention? And it's honestly a constant battle. So that's why even times when we're podcasting and if I'm not talking much, I'm like on my phone. And half the time I'm just like doing my coloring book app or something.
So all these little pieces are coming together in my head right now about you two.
Yeah.
Because I've known you for so long and everything that you're saying, I'm like, nope, that checks out. Okay.
Yeah. That's why when we used to podcast in the evenings on a Thursday, I'd come home after work just depleted of all energy. Adderall's worn off and I'm just like I know I'm a pain in the ass to deal with right now, guys. I'm so sorry. But we're going to power through this, get some alcohol in me. It'll be fine. Yeah. So as a player, it's challenging to sort of balance that. I want to know what's going on so I can riff off of that. But also if I'm not in a scene, it's hard. It's really hard because you don't want to be rude. And I think that's a lot of ADHD and a lot of just not being a neurotypical person is you're constantly trying to explain to the world that you're not an asshole. Like your brain is just different. Like I'm not trying to be an asshole. I'm not trying to be I'm not trying to be lazy. I'm not trying to be forgetful. It is important to me. I literally my brain just cannot hold on to it. And it's really frustrating.
I know it's not quite the same thing, but the closest thing I can relate to that was after I got a concussion last year. That was the weirdest 3 months of my life.
Yeah.
It just, nothing clicked, nothing connected. And just I almost walked into the wrong house once. Mm-hmm. Just like, whoa.
So example, yesterday I went over to my friend's house to go hang out and have a glass of wine and have a nice girls' day, And I get to her house, I park, and suddenly my keys aren't in the ignition anymore. And I was just like, okay, I know I had them because I drove here. What happened? And somehow I had taken them out of the ignition and put them in the passenger seat of my car, and they had slid under my bag in half a microsecond. Yeah.
And as a game master, let me tell you, one of the biggest reasons I keep copies of characters players' character sheets is because invariably someone will thought they packed their character sheet and didn't.
Yeah.
Like, no, these stay here.
Just leave this here. So yeah, as a player, that's one of the things I like about having really gotten back into gaming with NPC as a GM is he knows what it's like and he's very good at keeping me occupied.
I am sad about the fact that I used to be worse on other players. Before I realized what exactly my own problem was, I used to get a little upset with players who would be distracted at the table. And then in the later years, as I got back on ADD meds in my late 30s, or my mid 30s, basically. And after that, I was like, yeah, actually, this is an issue. And other people, I see why they are distracted and how they cope with it. And I learned at that point to be less irritated by it as a GM.
Does your ADHD, Poppy, have anything to do with that special dice set that you made? Or is that a different thing altogether?
So from what I know of such things, I'm not a doctor.
No, I'm a doctor.
Your first name is Doctor. ADHD is often comorbid with other sort of brain differences, such as like dyscalculia, dysgraphia, dyslexia, all the things where your brain kind of garbles things and then interprets it strangely. I'm not great with words in English and spatial recognition. That's the word I was looking for.
As she waves her hands in the air.
What is this thing?
She's casting a spell.
Casting fireball, I'm not great with spatial reasoning. And in the beginning, figuring out the dice was really challenging for me because I couldn't just look at it and know what it was. So making that dice guide I made is basically how I taught myself I just had to memorize what they looked like. Similar to when I used to play an instrument back in the day when I was a teenager, I would go through all my sheet music and write the letter below each and every note because I couldn't decipher it fast enough, but I could read the letters, which is funny because I'm a little dyslexic. But so it's like that spatial reasoning and math. My brain can't really hold numbers in my head either. I really can't do math in my head unless it's very simple.
What fingers are for?
But I only have 10 of them. So it's kind of that similar. It's really hard to TLDR. It's hard to explain. But yes, it is all kind of related to how Poppy's brain is a little bit different from the average bear. Yeah.
So I think a lesson I hope everyone takes from this particular discussion is maybe be patient with people sometimes.
Curiosity, not judgment.
Yeah,
One thing that I will add here, because this is a podcast where we drink and we talk about drinking, this is kind of a dangerous thing to say, but I often drink when I game because I find that alcohol in low quantities helps to mitigate some of the squirrel aspect.
Mm-hmm. It's a central nervous system depressant. Yeah, it slows you down a little. Yeah.
Makes the hamster on the wheel not go so fast.
Yeah. And I've read many discussions online of people that are like, drinking is bad for gaming. No one will ever drink at the table. It's like, I hear ya, but consider that it does have its applications.
Yeah. Well, and again, like you said, it's very dangerous because a lot of us with ADHD struggle with depression and anxiety because we don't know why we can't do things that other people can do, especially when we're younger. We're like, I don't understand why this is so hard for me. Why is it literally so hard for me to remember to put gas in my car or to remember my lunch is in the fridge before I leave for work or whatever, And it can be really damaging to one's sort of self-image about like, well, I'm just stupid or I'm just lazy. This stuff is easy for other people. It's not easy for me. There's something wrong with me. Whereas what it actually is I just have to do things differently. I've heard ADHD described before as imagine there are two people going hiking. One person packs all the water they're going to need with them in their backpack for the entire day. one person brings a small filtration device and they go and filter water and they find water and filter it as they need it. So ADHD is more like the latter. We wake up every day with not enough dopamine, not enough serotonin, not enough GABA, not enough whatever, right? So we're constantly chasing it to get our brains to work, you know? So, yeah, what was I talking about?
About how good of an episode we just made.
We just did an amazing episode.
I'm a hero.
But yes, alcohol, not the best coping mechanism for things. So that's why we say in low quantities. And if you abstain from alcohol, if you want to not use alcohol as a coping mechanism, there's lots of other ways to, slow down, bring your brain, bring your heart rate down, do breathing exercises, all that kind of good stuff. Ask your local social worker or therapist or whoever if, you're like, how can I slow my heart rate down without using booze? Yeah.
Well, I think that's a really great cover. And any final closing thoughts?
Just as you were saying before, instead of getting irritated with the player, ask them what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Say like, hey, you seem kind of distracted. Or, hey, I'm not sure you were paying attention. And just ask questions without judgment and find out what's going on. It may just be that like, oh, I have to do this in order to pay attention. Oh, okay. That kind of stuff. Just ask questions.
Just be patient. Be a friend.
Yeah.
Don't drink white Ukrainians.
Nah, I don't think I would ever have one of these again.
This is so much booze. I'm already like, shit.
There's a reason that NPNC and I had a quarter.
Jiminy Christmas.
I went for the full one, and I'm really regretting it right now.
Yeah.
There's still a lot in your glass right now, isn't there?
Sure is. Oh, boy.
And with that, as always...
Yep. Micro-sized Mars.
Yeah.
What are we doing again?
What are we doing? Who am I?
I'm NPC.
I'm just Jacob.
Dr. Xander, Gerrymander.
I am Poppy Beaujolais Squirrel.
Keep the shiny side up.
What, something shiny?
Always tip your bartender with shiny things.
Yeah. Try and roll the crits and be patient with your ADHD fellow gamers.
And please always drink responsibly.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining us, friend. We've reached the end of Bikers, Dice, and Bars.